Awesome. Thank you so much, Stuart. It's a pleasure to join you all tonight. Thank you for joining us. An amazing conference so far. And I have the job of essentially encapsulating what might be happening in the near future of AI in about 25 minutes. So it's going to be a very fast and interesting ride. So I'll try and get through this. You'll notice that my slides are very sparse. We're talking about a lot of trends. There's not a lot of bullet points here. But we're going to get into what's happened in the last couple of months and how that projects over 2023 specifically. And the large language models have gripped the public imagination. You've seen ChatGPT, which has dominated the conversation, despite the fact that it is far from the only large language model on the market, but it has created a public dialogue like we've never seen around artificial intelligence and creative media. And especially in the creative space, not just the technical space, which is something that surprised a lot of people. However, if you've been in the AI and ML space, probably not as surprising to you. But the conversation has shifted to, if AI can do so many things that we thought it might not be able to do so easily, how do we respond to that? And as a result, there's been a lot of conversation about creativity in AI and people's confusion about how this affects their own ability to create and their role in the job market. So with that, I think a fun place to start is kind of addressing that head on and the narrative around generative AI.
Audio speeding.
Action.
In a world where machines have become creative and we design by algorithm, there's only one thing that can save the human race. Blow up.
Or you could just come to a panel on AI.
I guarantee you that's a much less violent way to do it.
So there's a lot of fascination around what AI can do and what it can't do. We're going to go through a bunch of trends in a very short period of time, and it's going to come at you fast. So I recommend that you follow the advice of Morpheus.
Listen carefully. After this, there is no turning back. Stay with me and take the red pill, and we'll show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Because it goes deep. It goes very, very deep. And we're going to explore as many trends as we possibly can in the short period of time that we have. And I'm going to start with large language models because that is what everyone is talking about. And as a result, there's a few things I want to address around adoption, all the way to the challenges of implementation and what that's going to mean for pretty much every single industry in the market. So let's talk about adoption specifically. This is a graph from Gartner. It's called the hype cycle. You may be familiar with it, but it's a really great tool to essentially peg where an industry and society is with its relationship with the technology, how mature that technology is and how we perceive it. Everything from the inception of the technology to the peak of inflated expectations, which is where there's so much hype around something it can't possibly live up to all of the things people think it can do, down to this trough of disillusionment, which is my favorite phrase. And that is when people realize, wait a minute, it's too premature. It's not capable of doing everything that marketing promised it could do. And a lot of investment tends to leave, but also a lot of speculation that shouldn't be there also tends to leave. As a result, those who are committed to building the space have more ability to focus, and more of the infrastructure in that space starts to build up. And that's what we get to what we call the slope of enlightenment, which is where the technology or the industry starts to deliver on those promises we originally made back when we had the peak of inflated expectations, but now we have the time, the resources, and the development to actually deliver on those. And then we get to what's called the plateau of productivity, which is where we have a lot of stability, large incumbents in the space, a very mature ecosystem. And if you take a look at this, you can pretty much guess where we are as far as looking at AI. It's a field that's been around for over 50 years, but we're really here. We're way above the peak of inflated expectations. We're so far above it. In fact, everyone's kind of lost their minds, and we're making all sorts of predictions of what AI can and can't do. Some of it is grounded in reality, some of it is not. And it's led to a lot of disinformation, and even people who are really embedded in the space are falling for it. In fact, if you take a look at this graphic, this made the rounds around LinkedIn, and a lot of very respectable AI voices were putting this out on their feed saying, this is amazing. GPT-4 is going to be orders of magnitude larger than GPT-3. And unfortunately, this is not true. This came from a misquote of a conversation with Sam Altman, where the other person said, this is something that would happen many years from now. And then it was essentially requoted as, this is what's going to happen with GPT-4. Graphics were designed around it. the compelling argument was designed around it. It sounded really plausible. Unfortunately, even Sam Altman has come out and said, this is absolute BS. It's not going to happen. So this is something that happens in that narrative, and part of why we go from that peak of inflated expectations so quickly to the trough of disillusionment. Now, on the other side of that is this adoption curve for AI. And we're seeing things we've never seen before. This is a screenshot from the World Economic Forum conversation between Wall Street Journal and Satya Nadella. And he had this anecdote of when he was in India recently, he saw a demo where someone in rural India using a local dialect was having conversation via WhatsApp with a bot that was developed by Microsoft. And they were asking essentially through their government systems to work with certain forums and have certain government processes taken care of. And the bot said, okay, to do that, you should do this, you should go to this website. And the person responded in their own dialect, no, I don't want to do that. I want you to do that for me. And the bot essentially understood what it needed to do, and it took care of and automated that process. And that's because Microsoft essentially had used, gone through all of the government documents, made it so that you can automate the translation into all the different dialects within India, and make it so that you could actually interact with them, engage with them, complete them, and send them back in. And this is amazing to see that a innovation that happened in the West Coast of the United States, making it to rural India in a period of about 5 months. That is diffusion of technology like we have never seen before. And that is going to become the new normal around AI, especially as we see the adoption of large language models and the infusion of AI into every sector of the economy and industry. Leading to that is commodification of large language models. We hear a lot about specific ones, especially GPT-3. They are far from the only large language models in the market. There are dozens and hundreds and thousands of them, or hundreds of them that are being developed now, and we'll have thousands of them down the line. The other challenge around commodification is to train these, you need enormous amounts of resources. And as a result of that, most of them have been trained on very similar data sets. And to get more and more data, you essentially have to consume the entire internet. And those data sources become fewer and fewer as the models get bigger, which means differentiation becomes harder. As a result, to create that competitive moat around a large language model, or even a machine learning or AI model in general, proprietary and private data sets are going to be what creates that differentiation for these models. And that's going to be something we'll see themes of. We already hear about people doing fine tuning and retraining around a lot of private data sets to create innovative tools. And we'll see more and more of that being what LLMs rely on. Consolidation. We're seeing so many different tools that come out that are really just features masquerading as platforms. Jasper is being threatened right now by the fact that ChatGPT can do a lot of the things that Jasper can do. Jasper is a writing tool using AI that had a lead in the market for a very long time. They're a unicorn, they're a large company, great revenue, but overnight, all of a sudden, lots of other tools can do the exact same thing that Jasper can do. And this is also seen by the number of tools that are popping up. This is a list of several hundred different generative AI tools. And it shows that there are so many features that are being built into tools that should really be rolled up into a multi-use tool that can do several different things. And one example of this is a company called Tome. And they've rolled up several tools around generative AI to create entire presentations at a prompt. Rather than just creating an image like you would with Midjourney or Stability or DALL-E, you can type in a prompt and it generates a full deck. So those of you who are entrepreneurs looking for investment, it's a great way to get your pitch deck started. I wouldn't recommend taking everything that it does unequivocally, but it's a great way to get your images, your design, your copy all written from one single prompt. So it's using multiple models to bring in both imagery and text. Again, multiple features into one platform. Next is multimodal. And I talked about with Tome, it does multiple things. Multimodal is about the idea of the models handling multiple formats within the model itself. So you can imagine, perhaps with GPT-4, you might be able to get text and audio and video all within one platform, possibly even more. So today you would go and you would generate a single image or perhaps a very short video. With multimodal, you'd be able to make one prompt that would give you the short video, plus perhaps even some backing audio that would fit the theme of that video within one interface. And then composability. This is huge. So it's actually quite easy to connect these LLMs to different models to be able to augment their capability, their knowledge set, and also kind of make up for some of the shortfalls of these models. ChatGPT, or GPT-3 in particular, is incredible in terms of reasoning and in the ability to create lots of text and human reasoning in particular, which is impressive for a model like this, but it's really bad at the hard sciences. So there was one engineer who used LangChain to connect ChatGPT, or GPT-3, with Wolfram Alpha, which is exceptionally good at the hard sciences. And since they both use natural language as essentially their programming model or the input, the connection works really, really well. So passing off between GPT-3, which is phenomenal reasoning, and Wolfram Alpha, which is phenomenal the hard sciences, you start to make up for, kind of pave over some of the weaknesses in the model while really enhancing the capabilities. And this type of extension is being seen all over the place. And I predict this is going to explode even further. Another is multi-agent interactivity. This is something that, unfortunately, I feel like the thunder was stolen by ChatGPT when it was released. This was a model called Cicero, released by Meta a few days before ChatGPT broke on the scene. And what Cicero does is it was trained on the game called Diplomacy, which is orders of magnitude more complicated than Go or chess. And the reason for that is it's a game that relies on multiple humans, essentially, and their decision making. It's a game about international conquest within the confines of World War I. And what Diplomacy, or Cicero, does is it is able to negotiate with multiple human counterparts or multiple other AIs and keep track of conversations, logic, and goals over the course of a long period of time, and the goals, ambitions, and moves of multiple stakeholders, sending hundreds of messages back and forth over the course of a single game. This is incredibly impressive. And what they found is that by training the model to be 100% honest all the way through, it actually became one of the most effective diplomacy players within a short period of a few days. In fact, it was in the top 10% of all online players within a matter of days by using this method. And this is really interesting for creating proxy webs or being able to have agents that work on your behalf as an artificially intelligent agent, or even having agents communicating with other agents. So I think we'll see some really interesting implications from this development in this sector specifically, taking chatbots to a whole new level with being able to represent your interests on your behalf in all sorts of other applications. Moving forward, there's a lot of other things around AI, since it has become such a prominent issue in the public imagination, that really have not had to be discussed at length in such a large audience before. And that's going to be things like regulation, trust of algorithms, fairness, and interpretability. And this is it's a good thing for creating regulation around these, because there's lots of industries that want to be able to use these in certain capacities, but simply can't, because the legal and legislative framework does not exist. And the ability to prove that certain things happen within is not there yet. And if you've been in machine learning for any period of time, you've probably seen this study. This is actually a study of the Lion dataset, where the researchers went in and took a look at what was within that dataset. And ultimately what they found was a lot of issues with the data. The data is very problematic. That's not a secret. Things like misogyny, pornography, and malignant stereotypes exist within the data. Some of that is deliberate, actually, but some of that is not. And this has created a really strong dialogue around how do we create data sets that are productive for machine learning algorithms. Second. Okay. I hear that you can't hear audio, so I'm going to wait for 1 second to make sure that we are clear. Can you give me a confirmation in the chat if you can hear me? Or let me know if you can't. Okay, seems like everyone can. Want to make sure I'm not talking to myself here. Okay, so with that in mind, the data sets themselves, there's a lot of focus on alignment, on trust, and clean data sets. It's honestly an incredibly complex issue, and it's not as simple as just saying, hey, we should go through the data and clean it, especially when you have billions and billions of data points. But what it has done is it's made data curation a very strong focus, and it's something that will expand beyond the role of a dedicated person who's just doing that. In many companies, they have teams dedicated to it. In others, no one's dedicated to it. And I think this is a role that's going to get exponential growth within the next year. There's also scandals that are starting to pop up around the building of these models. Getty is suing Stability.AI. There are artists who are taking their perspective to court around the training of Stability, Lion, and ArtStation. And a lot of this comes down to attribution and compensation. And again, that gets back to the legal framework. There is no legal framework for this. And a lot of this built on the technicalities of copyright law, which is extremely fragmented around the globe. So we expect that over the next several years, this is going to start to create legal precedents for how these models should be built, how they can be deployed, and how they should work with the data that they're using. They're really interesting and uncharted territories here. The next is some scandals around how these are being built. Unfortunately, OpenAI has to deal with the fact that there's a lot of news around how it was trained. And this is a legitimate argument. Do we want our models to be trained this way? It's pretty common practice within the industry, but it also is now just being displayed to the public who are using these models. So there's going to be a lot more scrutiny of the more popular models, which will bleed down to independent agencies. So if you're implementing AI, you may end up getting some of these questions. How is your model trained? Who's training it? And what kind of data sets are you using to use these models? And then finally, liability. Again, without much legislative framework, using AI within your product opens you up to different forms of liability. And again, that's another reason why large enterprises are comfortable with using AI in very specific pieces of their business and not in others, especially things that are public facing. One field that has taken a lot of interest and a lot of advancement is the area of AI alignment and safety. Alignment is about making sure that AI is built towards the interest of humans, especially as we move towards the idea of AGI and ASI. And safety is about making sure that the models are doing what we want them to do and not creating harm. One specific area is mechanistic interpretability. And this is the scholarly pursuit of understanding what a model is doing and be able to explain it. Explainability and interpretability are very close to each other. Mechanistic interpretability has made some very strong advances. And in fact, they've been able to essentially decode what a model is doing up to about 3 layers, which is impressive. However, the current GPT-3 is 96. So we have a long way to go in terms of understanding what the different layers are doing within a deep neural network. But it's a very strong field that's growing immensely, and hopefully will have strong implications for interpretability, which comes into play for industry, the medical field, law, etc. And a lot of, in the medical field, can't apply this to diagnoses because you need to be able to understand why a model came to that decision before you can actually deploy that, especially in the US. Then performance. So it's not just a lot large language models. There's some really strong advancements that have happened within the AI field that are going to increase the performance of our models and allow us to deploy them in places we never could have before. And a lot of this actually comes from the training of models on video games for Go and even on Dota, StarCraft 2, etc. People weren't really sure why games were so important in the very beginning, but the same models and training methods being used on games have also been used on creating breakthroughs in new machine learning models, and specifically matrix multiplication. For those of you who aren't in the field of ML specifically, that might sound really boring. Matrix multiplication might bring back really horrible memories of math class, but it is the universal language of machine learning. It is everywhere. And the development of Alpha Tensor from DeepMind improves matrix multiplication and ML model performance by 10 to 20%. That is massive. And this is also something that we've been trying to do for decades. However, the ability to search for these models has been very, very difficult. But with methods that they used for the game training, you can apply that to discover new ways of enhancing model performance. So this has everything from energy performance implications, model performance, and model size. And then sparsity is also a territory that's getting a lot of attention. The models themselves today are mostly what we call dense neural networks. They're very thick. They have tons of parameters. They're built for the GPU era. GPUs are amazingly good at training ML and AI models, but we want to be able to take these models that are absolutely massive and apply them across the board from not just massive data centers, but all the way down to smaller devices, edge devices, IoT, your laptop, maybe even your smartwatch. And sparsity is one way that we can get there. And that's the idea of having models that aren't as dense. And as a result, these models, and there's a few companies in particular who are able to take these models and get them to run on local machines using CPUs instead of GPUs significantly faster. For example, being able to use like BERT model on a 4-core GPU or CPU instead of a T4 GPU, that's actually faster. So by creating sparse models, you're able to get higher performance on lower performing machines. That now creates new opportunities for deployment. And that could even be your smartwatch eventually. The goal is to be able to get these models to perform practically everywhere. So you can have them on IoT, security cameras, in your car, on your smartwatch, on your smartphone. So these large language models aren't just locked to cloud servers, et cetera. And then synthetic data. Of course, synthetic data is nothing new. It's not something that we're just getting into, but the new opportunities for synthetic data are exploding. And we've made the world legible to machines, and to allow them to essentially interact with the world, training them in synthetic environments is really helpful for that. And this is an example that's a few years old. It's called a drone simulator from Microsoft. And this is actually a drone that's being trained inside of an environment inside of Unreal Engine. And we can use all sorts of synthetic environments to train these machines for real physical world environments without ever having to enter those places. And then essentially transfer that model into these devices and have new ways to train them. Synthetic data is going to absolutely explode even more than it already has. It's become one of the most important things for training a model for safety reasons, for complexity, for completion, and also for areas we need to run the training hundreds of millions of times over to get the resulting model. And synthetic media is also another component of that. So let's talk a little bit about synthetic media.
Oh, and good luck on your South by Southwest submission, Ian. What's it about?
Oh yeah, thanks. I'm going to be talking about synthetic media.
So synthetic media is essentially anything that has been wholly generated or manipulated by an algorithm. And 5 years ago, that would have been a small portion of what you see on the internet. Today, it's a lot of what you see on the internet, and eventually it will be the majority of what you see on the internet. Now, synthetic media and synthetic data are very closely linked, but synthetic media is something we're seeing a lot with the generative AI tools, and it's creating opportunities across the board. However, the concern is a lot of people are thinking, hey, if there's so much synthetic media can do, what does that mean for my role in society? Hopefully, if you're in the space of ML and AI, you see where this is going without the need to fear about being replaced anytime in the near future. But in case you're still a little concerned, I do have a message from some of my friends.
Ian's right. We're not here to take over the world or even your jobs.
And the Hollywood narrative often paints us as malicious.
But the things that we can create together are just starting to reveal themselves.
And you can do things you aren't capable of doing on your own. By the time it's all said and done, it'll be hard to tell if you're one of us or we're one of you.
And with that, I want to say thank you for your time. Hopefully that was a fun ride for you. And I don't know if we have time for questions, but I know we're going to be jumping into a networking event shortly. So I'd be happy to address your questions there if we don't have time here.
Absolutely, yes. You're absolutely right, Ian. We have run out of time, but you used the time incredibly wisely. I found that fantastic. Thank you for such a great closing keynote and for bringing our sessions to their most natural end with an absolute bang. I thought that was wonderful. Thank you so much for all of that. We are going to go into networking, but before we do that, I need to just thank a few people and also just remind everybody of a few housekeeping notes. So first of all, huge thank you to all of our speakers for being here. Ian, thank you for that amazing keynote. Thank you to all of the speakers before you. It was wonderful. We couldn't have done this without them. And of course, we could not have done this without the support of Intema. Thank you for allowing us to bring all of this content to our attendees, who, of course, we ultimately could not do this without. Thank you for joining us, being part of it, interacting on the chat. Get ready to do more of that. We'll talk about that in a second. Don't forget, if you want to share any of the things you've learned, anything that really fired you up, any screenshots you grabbed, you can do that using the hashtag WinMENA Intema, WinMENA. You can do that anywhere that you can use a hashtag. I have been monitoring a few of the different social networks. I'm still waiting for someone to post their first TikTok with the hashtag, so go ahead and do that. The recording of this event will be available afterwards, so you can watch it all back on demand. And also, I'd love to invite you all to Intema's annual Machines Can See Summit. It's an international summit bringing together the leading minds in AI. to share the very latest ideas and trends in computer vision, machine learning, and of course in investment. This year, Machines Can See will be in Dubai on May 3rd and 4th. And we'll bring up to 15 venture funds with it. So, you'll be able to see your AI ministers join Machines Can See. Stay tuned. Look out for news on that on the Intema webpage. You'll be able to find out all about it. Follow them on social media, and you'll see the invitations there as well. And get the opportunity to have a pitch slot for your startup at the summit. So it looks like a great opportunity to me. Now we're going to go into the open networking. Stay in here. You've got your chat window there. You can chat to each other. You can pose questions that didn't get answered to the speakers that are staying around. Our speakers will stay around for about another 15 minutes or more. You're free to stay for as long as you like, and just join the room. Feel free to chat. You can use your mic and video. There's lots of rooms available. You'll see those on the menus, and enjoy talking to each other, posing questions to speakers, getting some direct interaction with them. But in the meantime, I've been Stuart Rogers. I'm editor-at-large at Data Economy, which talks about AI and data science and Web3, as well as Grip Daily, and contribute to many other publications, mostly speaking about AI and blockchain and other emerging technologies. Also CEO at the Digital Mental Health Alliance, where there's a lot of artificial intelligence trying to improve mental health of individuals around the world. It's been my absolute pleasure to be your host and moderator today. Thank you very much to Intema and everyone on the team for inviting me. For now, I will bid you adieu and see you in the chat rooms. Thanks so much, everybody.